from the actual broker briefing that we did a few weeks ago, which I think is going to be really helpful for you guys because it comes straight from the horse's mouth. We've got a few people with NAR that are the National Association of Realtors that are giving these updates. One is Michelle McCaskill. She's the VP of Risk Management for NAR, and she's also the Assistant General Counsel for them. So she gives a lot of really good information there. And then also Debbie Way, who's with Canopy, and she's the one who's kind of going through and policing what we're putting on MLS and making sure that our listing descriptions and what we're putting on MLS and what we're representing jives with fair housing. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to ask you guys to kind of bear with me as I do this because I've never shared my screen before. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And it's a YouTube, so I can't like hack it up, but I'm going to be kind of going to the blips that are the most important for you guys to understand. But just to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about, and y'all, this is probably just going to be like in one ear and out the other with some of this stuff because most of us don't remember this stuff, right? We do our ethics training once every 4 years, but that's why this is important because these updates do apply to you. We're going to be talking about changes in the fair housing policy, specifically policy statement 29, which deals a lot with what you can and cannot say online, and also what the protected classes are and what constitutes discrimination. So we're going to be talking about that, or at least some other people on YouTube are going to be talking about that. And also changes to Article 10, so 29 and 10. 10 has more to do with your online representation and your real estate or non-real estate related activities. And this is all, again, all of this comes from the Code of Ethics, okay? So what I'm going to do, give me 1 second. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully I won't screw this up too bad. There's nothing weird on my screen. Okay, everybody ready? Hang on, let's see what happens. Oh wait, there's Rosie. Okay. I love that y'all let me learn as I go with this stuff because, you know, technology just ain't my thing. Screen. I'm going to share that one. Okay. Woo! Everybody see that? Or is anybody seeing my screen? Or just...
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Oh, yay! That's wonderful. Okay. So I think it's important for you guys to see this exact thing, that I saw. And so I'm going to click on it. All right, and I am going to kind of back it up to where I think it's the most important place to start, because there's a lot of people talking on this thing that are just kind of enjoying hearing themselves talking. So I really just want to run through all this so you don't have to see that, because it's like an hour and a half long video, so we're not doing it. But I am going to start with Michelle McCaskill. I feel like she is really, really helpful. Before I do that, though, there's a part of this video that I'm not going to make you guys sit through in the beginning. And it has to do with a new, I guess, online program that you guys can practice talking to people, practice actually mock selling a house. It's actually kind of neat. You have to sell 6 houses on this online program. It's called Fairhaven, and you can get to it through the Canopy website, but it's also, I think it's I'll post it, but I think it's realtor.fairhaven.com. And it's a simulation essentially of how you would go through how someone approaches you, how you would then go help them find a home, and how you answer difficult questions from that person. So it kind of throws a lot of difficult brain teasers at you. If you do it right, all the way from start to finish, it gives you a thumbs up. Now, if you're like me, when you first heard about this Fairhaven simulation, you're like, I'm not doing that. Because, you know, what if I do something wrong? Are they going to like report me to somebody? No, it's meant to be a safe space where you guys can practice and go through some of these scenarios that might come your way at some point. So I know we all have so much spare time, but if you ever get into a point where you do have some spare time and you want to try that, I think it could be a really good idea. I watched her run through a whole simulation of it, and it was kind of eye-opening. So I'll send you guys that information when we're done here, so that if you want to simulate, you can. I guess the point of this is NAR is trying really hard, and Canopy is trying really hard to make sure we have all the information we need so we don't get ourselves into trouble. Okay. All right, so let me start with Miss Michelle McCaskill. I kept writing down timing of where I wanted to start this thing, and I think I got it at just the right place. Y'all be so proud of me. I did like prep work for you. And she, like me, has some technical difficulties, so you'll notice that she is trying to get her screen to share, and it didn't at first. So you'll have to have a little bit of patience with her too. Okay, here we go. Everybody hear this?
We don't hear it.
You don't hear it? Okay. Well, shoot. How do I do that? Anybody know what I might be doing wrong? Okay. Well, shoot. I might be doing her job for her.
Megan, click
Yeah.
on that little microphone thing down there, see what that's on. Do you see it next to the play button there?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I'm hearing her, but you guys aren't hearing her. Let me try one more time. No? Okay.
You want to try sending me the link and I'll try it?
Huh?
You can send me the link to this. I can try it from my end.
Okay. I've got all the timing of the video and all that fun stuff in here. So, well, shoot. Okay. Well, plan B, you guys, because Catherine, if I send it to you, I'm going to send you all the timing and it's kind of not going to be fun for you. Okay, plan B. And what I want you guys to also know is that I have slides of all this stuff. So that's my plan B. So I am going to go there so you guys can see the changes. And this is the stuff that she was going to go through. So hopefully this will be just as helpful. Okay. So these changes went into effect November of 2020. So they're really recent, you guys, and they have a lot to do with what has happened within the past, 6 months in our world, with COVID, with a lot of, violence and rioting and people feeling like they're not being treated fairly. There's a lot of reactivity that's happening within NAR. So they want to make a few changes here. Article 10 is one of the first changes that we're going to go through. And I think I did the overview with you. Yep. Expansion of the definition of public trust. We'll get there too. Sorry. I'm going to try not to jump around too much. Article 10 of the Code of Ethics, until recently, prohibited discriminatory practices in certain situations and only if tied to a real estate transaction. That's important to remember. Only if tied to a real estate transaction. It says that realtors shall not deny equal professional services to any person or for reasons of age, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, which is a big one for us, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Realtors shall not be parties to any plan or agreement to discriminate against a person or persons on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And that was amended to add gender identity and sexual orientation back in 2014. It goes on to say realtors in their real estate employment practices shall not discriminate against any person or persons on the basis of, and it lists those protected classes again, race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Okay. So that is Article 10 as we have known it. That is that's one of the really important things that we always make sure we're sticking to. We get tested out the wazoo on it. It always gets talked about in our update classes. Really important. Well, there have been some changes to it. Okay. I'm going to skip down so that you can see those changes. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to think where she had skipped around on this. So I want to make sure I get it here. Okay, actually, we're going to go to the changes to 29 because they relate to 10. 29 now says, it has said until this past November, the applicability of Article 10 was limited to the policy statement 29. So Article 10 is applying to the changes in policy statement 29. While realtors are encouraged to follow the principles of the Code of Ethics in all their activities, a realtor shall be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics only with respect to real estate related activities and the transactions involving the realtor. That was our policy 29 until November 2020. That got changed. that was amended. And again, I'll share all this with you so you have it if you want to go back over it. That was amended. Okay. So it doesn't now say, while realtors are encouraged to follow the principles of the Code of Ethics in all their activities, a realtor shall be subject to the disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics only with respect to real estate related activities and transactions. A realtor shall now be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics with all of their activities. That's the one thing that's the most important thing that you need to take away from this day today, is that all of your activities are subject to the same policies and the same restrictions that you would normally be subject to just in your real estate activities. So how this might apply would be your online activity. Most commonly, that's where that's going to apply. So I know my team, we're all here because we're good people. We love everyone. We want everyone to have equal opportunity, and we want to give that to everyone. However, so I hate even saying this to you guys, but it's important for you to understand that the majority of the things that we might say online or do online that could be considered a violation of the Code of Ethics or could be considered discriminatory, we don't even know we're doing it. So before you ever push that send button, really think about what you're saying. Even if it's saying, oh my gosh, I love my neighborhood so much. We have so many great families in our neighborhood. Look, here's a picture of all the kids playing in the cul-de-sac. That seems completely harmless, right? I mean, I've probably done that in the past. But because you're a realtor, even though you made a private life post, someone could say, whoa, Megan's talking about only families being in her neighborhood. I think Megan is discriminating in her personal life against people without families. Guy, that sounds ludicrous. It sounds completely ludicrous, but that's exactly how those things are going to be put through that sieve of whether or not you guys have violated the Code of Ethics and whether or not you guys would be discriminatory against someone based on, for example, familial status. Okay. So again, I'm going to read this again. A realtor shall be subject to disciplinary action under the Code of Ethics with respect to all of their activities. Okay, so make sure that before you post anything on Instagram, Snapchat, any of your social media, Facebook Parlor, whatever it is you're using, you need to be very careful what you post and understand that could what I'm saying in any way be put to the test of, and I'll go back up here to what these protected classes are, right? Color, race, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Okay. If anything that you're saying could be subject to scrutiny based on this, then you need to back it up and don't post it. Yeah, Catherine.
I was gonna say, one of the things that I see a lot that other agents will call you out for and will report you is even something that you think is simple, like walkability is really popular right now, right? We hear, especially the people in the younger generation say, I want something walkable, I want something accessible, right? So if you put that something is walkable or an easy walk to something, or a 5-minute walk to this, saying that something is walkable is actually discriminatory against people who may have some sort of physical handicap. You cannot say something's walkable. You can say it's close to, it's not far from, but you cannot say it's walkable to something. Because you're just thinking, oh, I'm describing that it's easy to get to, and walkability is popular amongst certain groups, but you can't say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these are the kinds of things that are changing and becoming more in the forefront of what we're posting, what we're doing. Thank you, Catherine. That's a great example, because how many times have we, listed a house that's right down the street from like Valentine Village? Walk to Valentine Village. Hate to say it, right around the corner from Valentine Village is probably going to be your best way, right? Or you can show without saying, you can put a picture in your pictures of the map of Valentine, where the house is, so people can see how close it is without you saying it, right? They're very important, important things that we don't even think about that, right? How could that be discriminatory? I'm not saying anything bad about a handicapped person. No, but you are implying something about a non-handicapped person that would then affect a handicapped person negatively. So
Megan, can I ask real quick?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Is this on our personal pages too, or just like our business pages? Because like, talking about the part about the kids in the neighborhood, like I don't think twice when I have 6 kids in my neighborhood. I'm like, I love these kids. Snap, snap on my personal page. So we can't even do that.
So there's going to be a lot of questions about this, and I wish I could play this video because she says this too. There's going to be a lot of questions about this. This is very broad. It's very broad, right? That you can be, and I'll flip back to this here. You can be subject to scrutiny. You can be breaking rules just by shall be subject to disciplinary action under the code of ethics with respect to all their activities. You are subject to it. If somebody sees it and gets mad at you, which it just blows my mind that they would, you could be subject to it. Like the first thing that came to mind, what I thought you were going to talk about is you were out handing out flyers and you could see your kids riding their bikes and all that stuff. These are your children. I think at some point, and this is just my interpretation, if you're posting something online about your children, that's your family. I don't see how you can be discriminating against someone else because you have a family. But I think if you're going to be talking about, again, and this is me kind of interpreting, and I'm going to do the best I can on this. Obviously, we have to use a little common sense. If you're going to be talking about how your neighborhood, I love being out in the neighborhood with all my friends and the kids are playing and the families. And, at that point, someone could look at that and say, Brandy's a realtor. She really shouldn't be talking about that stuff. I'm going to report her, right? It takes someone to report you. And I know it's hard. And I was kind of dreading this part of the talk because it's hard to be clear about it. It's hard to be clear about it. It's because it's so broad. It's so sweeping. And I heard that this was coming in December. And, the first thing I read online about it was a realtor can't talk about anything that would have anything to do with a protected class in their personal life. I'm like, so I can't talk to my neighbor about the people that are in the process of unloading their truck down the street. Looks like they have small kids, It's very confusing. But yes,
Megan, she has small kids, so that would be a big positive.
Right. But I'm going to go back to that example that I use about when you're posting or you're writing a letter or you're putting up a new listing online. I'm going to go back to what we said about keep it about the house, not about the people who could live in the house. In all of your practices, I want to challenge you to think about things in that kind of cut and dried way, right? Just stay away from the stuff that could get you into trouble. You guys, I see what you guys post every day. I'm not seeing you guys posting anything that would be a problem here. But if you have any questions, the best thing to do is to approach me and we can handle it on a case-by-case basis so we can learn more together. The most important thing that I'm trying to do right now is to keep you guys updated on what's happening, what they're saying that we can and cannot talk about. And guys, this is our speech is kind of being wrapped up into a little bow, and we can only say certain things. As realtors, we have to live by the code of ethics in everyday life. And honestly, guys, I think we're already doing that. I know that I am. I think it's really important that you guys are as well, but we're what we would represent to our clients, what we would represent out in the public when we're doing business as realtors is the same thing we should be representing in our personal lives as well. So, keeping it cut and dry in that way instead of the what if I say this, what if I say that? Well, what would you not say when you're talking to a client or a customer? How would you make sure that you're abiding by the rules in that arena? Make sure you're applying that in your everyday life. Does that make sense?
Looks as though Cindy and Katie have questions in the comments.
Do what?
It looks as though Cindy and Katie both have questions in the comments. Cindy's asking, can you state in a listing description about schools? And Katie's asking, what if you are tagged in posts that could violate said information?
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, because I'm sharing my screen, I can only see so much. Okay. hang on one second. I'm going to see if I can get back to this.
We understand you're still going over information and you may be covering stuff and what you plan, what, you know, stuff that may answer some of these questions and what you're about to cover too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can do, let me go over the rest of this information and then I'll go back to those questions top to bottom. That way we can just get through this fun stuff. And then we can kind of Q&A. So hang on to those and then I'll be able to kind of see the chat. Y'all technologically challenged is an understatement. Okay. So what we just talked about is we talked about Amendment 10, which defines protected classes. And then we went to 29, which talks to you about what you can and can't do and with regard to representation of yourself within those protected classes, and the changes to policy 29 that says that that actually is going to carry over to everything you do, all of your activities, not just your real estate related ones. Okay. Again, I know this sounds scary. This is the kind of stuff that you guys are already doing. What I'm doing is reminding you. So that way, you can't say that you didn't hear it from me. You didn't hear it from me. Okay, but those are the updates to the professional standards. There is also, they talk about harassing speech, and that we are not to be involved in any kind of harassing speech, which you guys already know. When I was watching this video, my first question was, well, please define harassing speech. Because, you know, there are a lot of people who say, well, that's harassing, that hurts my feelings, or that makes me uncomfortable. But in a lot of cases, we don't know what that is. What is harassing speech, right? Is that like in the eye of the beholder? No, we have a definition here. Harassment includes inappropriate conduct, so not just speech, comment, display, action, or gesture based on another person's, here we go, sex, color, race, religion, national origin, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and any other protected characteristic. Because gender identity is protected too. Okay, these are things that you guys are going to get updates on when you go to your CE this year. Examples of harassment or harassing speech: epithets, slurs or negative stereotyping, threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts, denigrating jokes, and the display or circulation of written or graphic material that denigrates or shows hostility towards an individual or group based on protected characteristics. There's your definition of harassment. And many of us don't have that. You know, we just know what we feel is harassing and what we feel is harassing speech towards us. But very often we don't understand what someone else might perceive as harassment or harassing speech. So this is going to be important as well. And again, like I said, I'm going to make sure you have all of this. Okay. Let's see. Hang on one second. So the test that's the test you're going to give yourself. Is the speech harassing, hate speech, epithets, or slurs? A very good way of doing that. You can go back to the definition all day long, but how would it make you feel? Right? What would raise your radar? You guys have good common sense. What would raise your radar? Is the speech based on a protected class? So all of that we just went through in harassing, and going back to Article 10 that defines the protected classes. If the speech that you're engaging in, or someone's engaging in with you, if it is, first off, if it's based on any of those protected classes, and then second off, is it harassing? Is it hate speech in your mind? Or does it involve epithets or slurs regarding that protected class? Then you might be in trouble. That's harassing speech. So we have to make sure we're not involving ourselves in that at all. Okay. And if someone does involve you in that, or if you see that and it concerns you, please come to me with it, or come to Catherine with it. So we can discuss it. And we can say, hey, you know, I know how you feel about this. Is this something that you want to take further? We can do that. Or, you know, are you just questioning this? And I encourage you guys to do that too. You can find that stuff and send me examples of it and ask questions regarding it. That might be a good kind of way to learn through this. Okay. All right. Other definitions that are important for you guys to understand. We're going to break them down because these are included in the definition of harassing speech or harassment. Hate speech. That's one that doesn't get identified. We just hear it thrown around a lot. Oh, well, that's hate speech because I don't like it. Oh, that's hate speech because it hurts my feelings. Okay, what is actually hate speech? Hate speech. Speech is the speech this is in, I think there's a typo here. Speech that is intended to insult, offend, or intimidate a person because of some trait. And there we go again. Race, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, or disability. Of course, that could include any of the protected classes, but they're giving you in this definition in Merriam-Webster the most often the most overused, I guess, or often discriminated against groups in hate speech. Okay, what is an epithet? Characterizing word or phrase accompanying or occurring in place of the name of a person or thing. A disparaging or abusive word or phrase. Okay, guys, we hear those things all the time, right? We hear them all the time, whether they're about us or whether they're about someone else. Those are things we hear all the time, and that is probably the most common way that harassing or hate speech is used, is through epithet. And slur, which is very similar, an insulting or disparaging remark or innuendo, a shaming or degrading effect, stain or stigma, right? So it has a shaming or degrading effect on the person that it is being directed towards. Okay, and it leaves a stain, which is literally like a stain on your shirt, right? It leaves a stain on that person's psyche and the way that they think about themselves. A slur also can leave a stigma. It can be in relation to something that's socially stigmatized, like being handicapped, you know. So those definitions are important. I think that we hear the words all the time, but we don't really break them down to what they actually mean. So that is important for you guys to understand. And let's see here. So here was an example. And when I started hearing this, I was like, well, I don't know where this is going. It seems kind of typical, but I'm going to read this out loud to you. An example of something that was seen on Facebook. All of these a-holes storming the Capitol need to be handled with the severity that they deserve. They are not patriots. They are a traitorous mob who are beholden to a scumbag politician who I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. Y'all, I didn't come up with this. This is actually in our MLS. Someone that's a member of our MLS posted this on Facebook. They followed that up with, my Republican friends, this is on you. I warned over and over and over what cult worship of Donald Trump would bring. Y'all ignored it, and here we are. So the question about this was whether or not that's hate or harassing speech. It's got a lot of bad words in it, and it's, again, this is with regard to the January 6th incident at the Capitol. It's got a lot of bad words in it. It's angry, right? But this does not actually discriminate against a protected class. So this was brought to the MLS, to our local MLS, to Canopy, because there was another agent who saw it. It was like, I know this guy, he's a real estate agent. This is hate speech. It's not hate speech because political affiliation is not a protected class.
Yeah, but it's at the same, it is not a protected class, but we don't want to be spewing this kind of stuff
Heck
about
no.
anybody or anything, right? We're not those kind of people. We have decorum, we have honor. We don't want to be associated with this kind of behavior, no matter what your political affiliation.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I thought that this was an interesting example. This is the one that they chose to use. I thought they would use an example of what is hate speech, but they used an example of what wasn't hate speech, because again, hate speech is not something that just, oh, well, that offends me, right? That offends me because I voted for Donald Trump. That hurts my feelings. I don't like that. But it's still not considered hate speech. This is the kind of the crazy thing. It seems like you should just not be able to conduct yourself in this manner, just like what Catherine's saying. Guys, we're real estate brokers. We actually go through a lot of training. We are handling the public, right? They give us their trust. We are involved in a huge portion of the public trust. We shouldn't be talking about stuff like that on Facebook. But with that kind of language, it's just unacceptable. And it would be unacceptable if I saw any of you guys posting anything like that. Okay. But the whole point of that is when you are seeing these things, when you are putting them through the scope of harassment or hate speech, you have to put them through the scope of the protected classes too. Okay. And speaking of the public trust, all right, let's see. They have made some changes to what that is, what defines public trust. Formerly, public trust was demonstrated misappropriation of client or customer funds or properly willful discrimination or fraud resulting in substantial economic harm. Okay, sorry, my phone keeps going off. Okay, now public trust refers to demonstrated misappropriation of client or customer funds or property discrimination against the protected classes under the Code of Ethics or fraud. So y'all, this is a totally like new definition of public trust. It is talking about misappropriating client and customer funds like it used to, or property, but also discrimination against the protected classes under the Code of Ethics or fraud. They're just sticking that stuff everywhere they can find it, wherever they can find to stick it. So again, I'll be sending this stuff out to you guys. Let's see. I'm just going to read this to you guys. NAR does not recommend specific discipline. This is about the disciplinary actions for certain offenses, but rather provides key points to consider with respect to discipline. Added to the list of key points in 2020, cases in which there is reason to believe that violations of the public trust, including demonstrated misappropriation of client or customer funds or property, discrimination against the protected classes under the Code of Ethics, or fraud have occurred, should be considered particularly egregious violations of the Code of Ethics when determining the appropriate discipline. So this is what they've done is they've taken what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot do regarding protected classes, and they've kind of filtered it into everything. Okay. Let me keep going. I'm still trying to hit the high points. I think there's 2 more pages on this one. And then the next one is really short. Okay. This is more about those disciplinary guidelines. And I'm trying to move this box so I can actually see what I'm trying to read. Okay. NAR has provided that considering too long of a respondent's history of violations can unreasonably affect the severity of discipline. NAR recommends a 3-year look back. Okay, so if they're going to go back to draw on things that you have or have not done in your past to determine disciplinary action, they're going to go back 3 years. However, if there is consistency in the types of violations, or if the violations are of the public trust, considering a longer history of violations could be appropriate in crafting meaningful discipline aimed at stopping the behavior. Okay. So I do want to also point out that with a lot of these new changes, especially the stuff that you're saying online, it's not retroactive. So if you said something online, standards of practices with Article 10, if you said something that could have been a violation now, if you said it in October 2020, they're not going to go back and ding you for it. You're not going to go back and be held to that standard because the standards weren't put in place at that point. So just so you know, if you're going back in someone else's Facebook feed and you see, or it just happens upon you, because I'm hoping you're not out there just fishing around for people to get them in trouble. But if it happens upon you that someone said something that from what we said today would be considered a violation back in October, it can't be considered a violation under today's standards, only under the standards of October 2020 and before. Okay. So that applies to you too. If you're like, oh my gosh, I posted something back in October. I really hope that wasn't bad. Probably go take that down. However, it would not be judged by these current standards. Okay. So that is that section. That's the most boring, most dull, most redundant section. So what I will do for the moment, let me see if I can find the chat box. There it is. let's look and see what these chats are and see if I can answer questions. Can you state a listing description about schools? Cindy, can you be more specific about that?
So can you say
state in
highly sought after Marvin School District?
Yes. Yes, you can say that. Now you wouldn't want to say highly sought after, mostly white Marvin School District, right? You wouldn't want to say that, but you can absolutely say that it is in a highly sought after school district, because that's actually notated in the listing too, what school district it's in. You can point that out again. Absolutely. You just wouldn't want to talk about the performance necessarily of that school versus other schools. You want to lead that horse to the water, right? And you can let them figure it out from there. Just like with the map, you know, the placement of where the house is in relation to Ballantyne Village, for instance. Let them figure that out. Let them make 2 + 2 = 4. Okay. And
You can't say better or worse schools either, but you can say popular. That's the number one thing that people use is, you know, highly sought after schools. They'll say popular schools, because popularity isn't based on a metric per se that could be discriminatory, right? So you can say popular schools, highly sought after schools, award-winning schools if they've won an award. Those things are typically used.
yeah.
Okay, one more question, and it's for me mostly, but I see obviously other agents are posting things as well. The fair housing logo. I'm confused about when I need to use that and when I don't.
I think the best case scenario is to always use it. That's, you know, when I was putting together a lot of my own marketing, I downloaded the Realtor Fair Housing logo combo, just so it's always there together. I think that we should always use it. Why not? So maybe, you know, going forward, we try to always use that fair housing logo.
Okay.
Okay. They used to be real sticklers about that, and then it got very lax. And I think that's part of what's going to be coming back around, is making sure that we have at least the Realtor trademark R or copyright R, whatever you call that. If you're not going to use the Realtor R stamp, but definitely using that fair housing logo is really important. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's the house with the bars through it. Okay. Greta says maybe just not mention my neighborhood. That is true. Okay. Katie, what if you're tagged in posts that could violate this? That's really, really important. If you are tagged in a post and you see that makes you uncomfortable, I'm pretty sure you can remove yourself from the tagging. So I would just do that. Okay. If for some reason you're having trouble with that, please reach out to the person who's tagged you and ask them to remove you. And keep a paper trail of that so that you can say, hey, I didn't want any part of this, right? This is not how I roll. But if you have any questions whatsoever regarding that and you feel uncomfortable, untag yourself. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Were there any other questions regarding that before I move on just to a little bit lighter fare? All right, cool. Okay, I'm going to change the slides here.
I had a question, Coach Megan.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do my best.
One question that I get a lot, and I'm sure other agents do as well. One of the most common fair housing violation questions I get is you have a client that has, you know, little ones, and they want to know if the neighborhood that they're considering has little ones too, so their kids have somebody to play with. So the question that I get is, are there kids in this neighborhood? Right? That's one of the more common ones. And from what I understand, the presence or non-presence of children goes under both familial status, discriminatory nature, and age discrimination too. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. You could be considered discriminating by answering that question. If that client decides not to or to buy that house based on the presence or lack thereof of children, then you have just helped them discriminate based on age and familial status. So I know we've been over this one a few times, but the best answer to that question is to say, I don't know the answer to that, but please feel free to come drive through the neighborhood whenever you'd like and see if you like the feel of the neighborhood. That's the best way to do that. Also, you can direct people to the internet. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you can find something about that online. But the most important thing is that you never say yay or nay. You never say, oh yeah, there's tons of kids in this neighborhood, or there's no kids in this neighborhood. And you guys, as a person who lives in the neighborhood that I work in a lot, people ask me that question all the time. And I have a hard time answering it because, not like stopping. I have a hard time not answering it, I should say, because yeah, there's lots of kids in Rosemont, right? I live here, I have kids. But because I do have kids, I'm also very careful about that. I'm not going to say, well, I live in the neighborhood and I have kids. Let's just not go there, right? Let's just not go there. But what I do normally say to that is, well, why don't you guys drive around the neighborhood after you leave the open house and see what you think?
Another question that I get when I'm out and about, especially when I'm showing condos or when people are looking in certain areas of town is, for example, I had a client who's like, I'm a single girl. I'm not married. I want to be around an area where there are lots of single guys, right? And I don't think my client meant anything bad by it. I think she's just husband hunting, right? No harm, no shame in that, right? But for us as realtors, when somebody asks, says, hey, I'm single, are there a lot of single people in this area? Is that familial status related? Are we allowed to respond to that?
That's lack of familial status. Therefore, that goes too. It's not about whether someone has a family specifically. It can be about whether they do or they do not have a family. Quite often, the people who feel the most discriminated against are those who are lack of familial status, right? Oh, well, I want to buy a house in this neighborhood. I like the houses. It's got plenty of space for me. I work from home, but I'm kind of being given the feeling that because I don't have kids, I may not belong here. You guys, that happens a lot, and it happens without you even knowing you're doing it.
And that's discrimination.
That's discrimination. Okay, so it is also lack of familial status, right? Not just familial status. Familial status actually means whether or not. It is your familial status, right? Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions in the chat box. I'm gonna go back and see if I can answer them. Cindy is asking about master bedroom. We are gonna go over that. The short answer to that is yes, we can still use master bedroom, but it is in one of my slides, so we will go over that. Sorry, y'all, my mom is calling me. Okay. Can you still use, okay. When talking to first-time home buyers, can you use this term? Wendy, which term specifically are you talking about?
Like first-time home buyer. I have a couple, they've never bought a home. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to say something where they felt like I was saying, well, you don't have experience, you've never done this before, and that could lead askew. But also they are first-time home buyers, so there's good things with that as well.
Yeah. Well, is someone's home buying experience a protected class? It's a great way to think about it. Okay. It's not a protected class as to whether or not they've ever bought a home before. But home ownership history, right? That doesn't go to a protected class. I know that kind of sounds silly when I say it to you that way, but that is such a great scope to view all of this through. Is that a protected class? No. Okay. It's okay to say first-time home buyer. It's okay to say that. Now, granted, there can be a little bit of stigma that comes along with that, right? Or there has been typically in the past, because first-time home buyers may not have an easier time or may have a harder time getting financed than someone else traditionally. Now, like Teresa said yesterday, first-time home buyers are where it's at. There's tons of them out there. So that is not a strength or a weakness, right? I think it's a great thing. It's positive. It's good that they're buying their first house. But that is not protected speech. So you're okay there. How is it discriminatory if people are asking the question about kids? Angela said, and I may have already kind of covered that, but I'll reiterate that. If someone is asking the question about kids, it's not discriminatory for your client to ask that question. It's discriminatory for us to answer it one way or the other. because kids lead to someone's familial status. So by extension, if you are answering that question and you're saying, yeah, there are kids in this neighborhood, you'll love it, lots of kids. Well, that buyer at that point has just, you have helped them make a decision based on a discriminated or a protected class, a familial status. And Catherine, I might be tripping over my words on that. So if you have a better way to say it.
You're exactly right. If somebody says, are there kids in this neighborhood? And you say yes, well, kids, why is that a protected class? Age, kids are, under 18 is considered a child, right? And familial status. Are you married or you're not married? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? You've just helped somebody discriminate based on not one, but two classes. So keep in mind when your clients are asking these questions, it's usually not meant out of malice, right? A lot of people, they say, oh, are there kids here? I have a kid. I want to make sure my kid has a friend to play with in the neighborhood. They're not asking to be discriminatory, but that's where you've got to step in and say, are there kids in the neighborhood? I can't answer that question because we're not allowed to talk about familial status or age. If you have concerns about the neighborhood, drive through in the evening and talk to neighbors.
It's the best way to go about it because you're encouraging them to answer their own questions.
Yeah.
You're encouraging them to find out for themselves, right? I mean, they can put two and two together if they're driving through a neighborhood and they're seeing play sets in the backyard, little Johnny and Susie's bike out in the front yard. I mean, if they're anything like my kids, they just drop everything in the front yard. So that's the best way to answer that. But Angela, it looks like you have a follow-up. You got a look on your face.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, if I know they have kids and that's where they're, of course, it's just like Catherine said, okay, it did not occur to me that I was helping them make the decision and discriminating against a neighborhood that is made up of single people, but they could potentially buy a house in. So I guess that's where the error comes in. Oh my gosh.
Well, and it seems it kind of flies in the face of our common sense, right? If someone says, hey, I want to live in a young community with a bunch of young people who don't have families. I really don't want to hear kids screaming and running around. Okay. Well, how do we handle that? Well, let me see if I can find some stuff that meets your criteria for a home and your price range and send you some stuff, right? You just have to skip right over it, just the same way that you would with kids. Are there kids in the neighborhood? Because we have kids. We want kids, kids in the neighborhood. Well,
I can't imagine having I feel like what Catherine, that answer of, you know what, I am not allowed to tell you is because I
don't know.
like I'm supposed to know the market. I'm supposed to know the neighborhood. I should know if there are kids or not in the neighborhood. And so I almost feel like it would be better.
You can explain that. Yeah, I mean, you can explain that in that way, that instead of saying, well, I really don't know, and you don't want to feel like you haven't done your research, but you can say, I've done a little bit of research on the neighborhood, but there are things we are and are not allowed to address. So I would encourage you to drive the neighborhood and see what you think. There are certain things that I'm not allowed to talk to one way or the other. You can explain that, hey, I've researched it. I think that this is a good house for you. Keep it about the house. The house checks a lot of your boxes. So, if you guys want to familiarize yourself with the neighborhood, absolutely feel free to do that. But this one checks your boxes, right? If you keep it about the house too, that's going to help you. Okay. How are 55 and over neighborhoods allowed? So that did get addressed in this, and I'm going to go back to my notes because I made notes on this. 55 and over neighborhoods, there's a little bit more to that. Let me see here. There's a little bit more to that. There's a certain piece of paper that's required before you're going to list a 55 and over, and I've got to go back through and pull that out. Here we go. Give me 1 second. Certification from the HOA. It's a statement of qualification from the HOA. And that was going to be in my next section, so I'll be able to skip over that. A 55 and over neighborhood, in order for it to qualify as a 55 and over neighborhood, and you can categorize it as such, although guys, I don't know how much longer that's going to last, right? I think they may start going to like active adult or they're specifying a number right now, and that's not good. But in order for that to be okay, and in order for that to jive, if you're going to list a house, say in Carolina Orchards or in Sun City, Carolina Lakes, if you're going to list a house in a 55 and over community, a big part of our process, and I know that Jennifer is on here because I saw her hop on, but I can't see her face because I can only see a few. So this is specifically for Jennifer to help remember when we're listing a house. You need to contact that HOA, Cusick, Hawthorne, the HOA management company, and get a statement of qualification from the HOA. That statement of qualification, we can keep on file for Sun City, Carolina Lakes, right? We'll have that on file. Once we have it, we have it. But that statement of qualification backs us up if anybody ever says, prove that that's a 55 and over community and that you're allowed to say that. Well, I have a statement of qualification from the HOA. And they did a case study on this update about how one neighborhood started letting adult children of 55 and overs live in their houses with them for prolonged periods of time. And because they did that, they then lost their statement of qualification. They no longer qualified because they had so many adult children, 20, 30 years old, living in their parents' house in Sun City, for instance. It wasn't that neighborhood, but that they lost that designation. So they had to stop saying that. That's important. Yeah, Catherine.
Like Cindy said, 55 and over communities are allowed. There's a specific statute that allows for an exception for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Megan said, for the certification for these neighborhoods, if it is legally designated a 55 and up community, most of the covenants and restrictions, just to prevent the situation Megan was talking about, have restrictions as to what kind of guests you can have and how long. Okay. Why does this matter to you? What if your clients are looking in a 55 and up community, but they say they want their grandkids to visit? Well, that's probably fine, but the covenants and restrictions will limit the amount. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They will only be able to be there for a certain amount of time. And guys, this was tested in court. There was a 55 and up community where somebody had a girlfriend who was 53. She was living with him. The girlfriend was 53. Right. And they were able to find this gentleman until his girlfriend moved out because she was not 55, but because it's in the covenants restrictions and they didn't want to lose their certification. Also, to Megan's point, there is a difference in a 55 and up legally designated neighborhood and an active adult neighborhood. Those are not necessarily the same thing. Okay.
Yep.
Community, you must be 55 and up. And if you're under 55, they will limit the amount of time that you can visit, right? An active adult community, not always, but typically does not have a legal age designation. They're called age targeted, not age designated. So there won't be something in the covenants and restrictions that specifies an age. So if you have a client who's looking for a community, there is a difference sometimes. Check your CC&Rs. There can be a difference between active adult and 55 and up.
Catherine, isn't it for 55 and up, they have to have a certain percentage? It's like that have to be 55 and older. It's probably like 95%, but I seem to recall that. Is that, do you remember?
So that depends on the neighborhood. Some it's a percentage, and some it's you can like the case study where somebody got sued, right? It's you cannot be in there for more than 3 months, 6 months, Usually it's a number of days in the CCRs that you cannot be there if you are under 55. But it depends on the community. Every community's CC&Rs are a little bit different. So you'll have, if that's important to your clients, you'll have to go over that and have their client talk with the HOA and ask the questions. You don't want to be the middleman on that. If it's that important to your client, give your client the HOA's phone number, have them call and ask all the questions. So that removes you from the liability of passing something along incorrectly.
Yeah, something that's really important to remember is that any time that you're listing a property or helping someone purchase a property in a 55 and over community, you need to be making that call to the HOA to find out, as Emilio said, he said here in his class, 80% is what he heard. We're all going to hear something different, and it's important that you give a call to the HOA and say, what are you considering 55 and over where you are, and because that's how they're going to be able to get that statement of qualification. So In every single situation that you're in with a 55 and over or an active adult community, I want you guys doing the research on each individual house to make sure that that community is following their own set forth rules, because you don't want to sell that house to someone as a 55 and over, and then, you know, less than a year later, they lose their designation because they're not following the rules that they set forth. Okay.
Something else to note, Megan, what's interesting on these 55 and olders, especially if your client mentions grandchildren and that they come and visit, a lot of these 55 and older a lot of these 55 and older communities only allow kids to be at the pool during certain hours of the day and certain days of the week. I mean, it gets pretty, so you definitely want to talk with the HOA and find out, you know, all of the different stipulations.
Always, because it will vary from neighborhood to neighborhood. Okay. That's good stuff, guys. Thank you so much for all your input on that, because I know we all have a lot of questions surrounding those kinds of communities. So we need to make sure we're taking them on a case-by-case basis, and we're getting all the information every time we go to list a property like that. Amy said, can you say family entertaining? Would single people be offended? Yep. You cannot say family entertaining. You can't say, you know, great backyard for family entertaining, or nope, just don't use the word family at all, right? That's the biggest red flag you could throw up, is to use the word family, because family definitely goes to familial status, right? So don't ever use the word family in any of your advertising at all, okay? If you wanted to address the backyard and you're thinking, gosh, in your head, you're like, this would be such a great backyard for somebody who wanted to put out a play set or a trampoline or whatever. What you're going to say is expansive backyard for enjoying the outdoors, right? Because whether you're outdoorsy or not, it's not protected. Some people don't like the outdoors. I do. Okay. Amy said, thank you. We're working on MLS listing now. So awesome. Yeah, don't use the word family. Okay. So with that, trying to be respectful of the time here, we're going to go through a few potential fair housing violations, and some of these might be covered in what we just spoke about. But this came directly from our lady at the MLS who handles all this stuff. I'm trying to remember. Y'all, you should see my notepads. I've got like 4 of them going right now, because I'm old school. Her name's Debbie Way, and she handles fair housing violations and listings. Okay, so this is right on target with what Amy was talking about. In describing properties in the MLS, you should avoid indicating a preference of one group over another. Like we kind of just talked about, you know, we want a family, nice, great house for a young family. Descriptions that relate to race, color, religion, age, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and references to racial, ethnic, or religious landmarks nearby. So most of you that have been doing this for more than 5 minutes have heard the story about the JCC. For those of you who don't know what the JCC is, in Charlotte, it's the Jewish Community Center. Very big synagogue, very big community center. It's a big part of the area and the foothold kind of over off Providence Road. A lot of people choose to live near there because they're involved in so many things at the church on a regular basis. As an agent putting a listing in MLS, your first thought is, well, this is great. I love this location right down Sardis Road or right off of Providence. It's a great location for anybody who wants to be close to the JCC. Let me put that in there. Close to the JCC. And it was happening over and over and over again until there were a few agents that were getting kind of irritated about it. And they said something, and they said, hey, look, it's a positive thing that this house is close to the Jewish Community Center. However, by referring to the Jewish Community Center in your listings, be it JCC or Jewish Community Center, you are encouraging someone to purchase that property or not purchase that property based on religious status, based on religion. And that was a big example, a big popular example that a lot of people heard about probably 15 years ago or so, 10, 15 years ago. And it makes you think twice, right? Right around the corner from Calvary Church. Okay. That's a good example of what would be a violation in your MLS listing. All right. Other information on potential fair housing violations. And this goes to the 55 and over. Housing for older persons entirely occupied by persons age 62 and older, or a development where at least 80% of the units have at least one resident who's 55 or more years of age. Misuse of 55 and older in those situations, misuse of it, even though you think, oh, well, everybody that lives here has got to be 55 or older. You can't misuse it, right? You need to have that statement of qualification. So we just went over all of this, but here it is in writing for you. Okay. So I won't keep going over that because we've already covered it. Master bedroom. So this goes to Cindy's question. A lot of MLSs around the country don't use that term anymore. They just stay away from it. Some it's prohibited. They can't use it. They use the term primary instead of master now. Primary bedroom located on main level. That sort of thing, right? It like my townhome that I just listed, it has a double master layout. To be careful, instead of me calling it a double master layout, because I thought, well, that's just a double whammy. Let's call it a double suite layout, right? There are ways that you can kind of get around that. We're still allowed to use it, but in some cases, when you know it's just going to be up in people's faces, maybe avoid it. But what they said we're allowed to use it right now. They don't think in our MLS, Debbie Way doesn't think that it's going to be too much longer before our MLS follows suit on that. So maybe another year, maybe two. So keep your ear to the ground on that. And I certainly will as well. What will happen is that drop down selection that says master bedroom, the name will change to most likely primary bedroom. Yeah, Catherine.
Are we allowed to use owner suite?
Yes. We're allowed to use owner suite. A lot of people use that instead because honestly, master bedroom is kind of an outdated term in a lot of ways. So, you know, the new home builders started calling these bedrooms owners suites because it just sounds, I don't know, it just sounds awesome, right? Ooh, owner, I own this home, right? Now, of course, master is intended to be, I'm the master of the home, the owner of the home. But yeah, it does carry a lot of stigma and a lot of weight for a lot of people. So you don't have to use that term if you don't want to, but it is still permissible within our MLS. Okay. And they say here at the bottom, they're going to revisit the question at a future meeting. So it's on the docket. Okay. So I'll let you know if anything changes there. All right. We've kind of run through all the updates. You know, we talked about, and we have talked about a lot, keeping it about the house. This is where that was discussed. And I wanted you guys to see that and to see her say, make sure you're always keeping your advertising about the house, not about who could potentially live there. It will keep you out of so much hot water that you would unintentionally just fall face forward into. So looks like we have some questions. So let's take a look at some of these. What do we call a family room? That's a good question, right? Family room is a term that at one point we're still allowed to use it. I don't like to use it, but we are actually still allowed to use that word. In that case, which I think is crazy because at one point they said we weren't, and then they said we could. They brought that back a few years ago. Very often I don't use the term family room. I use the term great room because a great room is more like a family room, and that a great room is going to be kind of right off the kitchen, a bigger multi-purpose kind of living space. And then you have dens, which are smaller, keeping rooms, which are right off the kitchen, and living rooms, which are considered to be formal rooms, right? Where you have all that furniture you never sit on, that kind of thing. So you can still use the term. Yeah, Cindy said great room. I use great room a lot, and I don't use family room anymore. Just because, again, if there's ever any question around a term and you've not been told definitively, yes, you can use that, don't use it, just in case. Use something else. There's always something else that you can use. But until they change their minds on this, which I'm sure that it's coming down the pike, family room is acceptable. Okay, but I say just stay away from it. It's the word family. Yeah. All right. I don't see any other questions. If anybody has any other questions, please do let me know. We're at 11:05 and you guys have been on here listening to ear numbing stuff for an hour and 5 minutes. So I don't want to take up any more of your time unnecessarily. But again, if you have any other questions, like the question that floats around about writing the letter, for instance, please let me know. If you have someone who wants to submit a letter, for instance, or you are putting together an MLS listing on your own and you just want another pair of eyes to look over it, I'm happy to do that. I got a letter this week. I got a letter on the townhouse I was just telling you about that went under contract. We got a letter from the buyer. It did not talk about them at all, except that they have a small dog and they're looking forward to, to playing with their dog in the neighborhood. Pet owners are not a protected class. So I was cool with that. Everything else they talked about was they love the soaring ceilings. They love the expansive kitchen. Can't wait to cook dinner in the kitchen. To me, that was completely acceptable. So I passed it along. So yeah, I'm looking over my list to make sure there's nothing else that I wanted to cover, but that was really about it. If you guys have any other questions regarding this, let me know. I'm going to email out links to these slides so you have them, and I will send you a link to the video that you guys couldn't hear, so that if you want to watch that in the first, I'd say the first quarter of that video is about the Fairhaven simulation that you guys can walk through and do. And I think it's a really good opportunity, especially for some of you guys that are newer and haven't been able to practically apply this over and over and over again. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to kind of work through simulations and situations that it throws at you at random. And again, you're not getting reported. If you do it wrong 6 times in a row, no one's going to find out about it. This is just for you to learn and practice how to work through situations that might be difficult. Like, are there kids in this neighborhood? Right? It seems like common sense to answer one way or the other, but we can't. Okay.
Hey, Megan. Quick question. So we obviously know that we should counsel our buyers to make any letter that they want to submit for their offer on a house should just be about the house. What if you're a listing agent and you receive a letter that talks about the buyer and their children and this and that? I mean, do you still show it to the sellers? I mean, I guess you do. I don't know.
You don't want to be the means to which your sellers are making a decision based on the buyer's lack of or their qualification within a certain protected class, right? You don't want to be the reason that seller says, oh, my agent gave me this letter and these people have 3 adorable children and 1 on the way, and we have a big family too, and we want to choose these people over the other people. That's an obviously multiple offer situation, but we want to choose these people because of their familial status. It's the same thing as not choosing someone else for their lack of familial status. So if that does happen and you have a letter like that in your possession that gets sent to you by the buyer's agent, I think at that point, there's a couple things you can do. This is not laid out about how you handle this situation yet. So, because it's a fairly new issue. I think you go back to that buyer's agent, say, hey, thank you so much for the letter. There's a lot of reference to familial status in here. I want you to understand that I can't share that with my seller, but I'll be happy to convey to them how much your buyers like the house and the things that they love about the house. I think you can do that. I would probably consider doing that. I wouldn't necessarily just chuck it and I'm not showing this to anybody or telling anybody about it. I don't think that's a very nice way to handle it. Treat other people how you'd like to be treated. Let that buyer's agent know this is how you're going to proceed with it. Let your seller know, hey, I've been given some information about the buyers, and pass on what you can say. They love the house. Whatever. They love the kitchen. They want to make cookies in it. They love the backyard. They're looking forward to hanging out there in the spring. Whatever you can pass on that doesn't induce your client to make a decision based on someone's status or lack thereof. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions, so I guess we're done. Yay! Pain pill swallowed. Again, if you have any other questions, let me know. Watch for my email. I'll get all this stuff posted for you so that you guys can kind of go back over it on your own time. And this is also being recorded for that purpose too. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks,
See y'all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.